remains dominantly backward, with many farmers concentrating on subsistence cultivation, leading to poor yields and a cycle of poverty as well as food insecurity. Many people say that Uganda would be more productive and able to retain its position as a regional or even African food basket if more investments were put into the sector. Specific areas of intervention have been identified and some efforts have been made to have the sector transformed, but with little effect. Agricultural experts suggest that the country needs to rethink its farming models and reinvigorate initiatives such as Prosperity for All, NADS, as well as the Agricultural Zoning Plan. Transforming that sector requires large amounts of money, yet the government has often said the available cash needs to be spread out so that other sectors can also benefit. Now, the 2012-2013 budget planning cycle has already started, and the campaign aimed at making the agricultural sector the main item in the budget is already underway, with civil society saying that the development bottlenecks Uganda faces today can be overcome largely by investing in agriculture. So tonight on Spectrum, we'll try and examine this campaign as we seek answers to the constraints in the all too important agricultural sector that many say has often been neglected or given less than adequate attention. Our guests tonight, Hon.Lydia, two-time Ugandan representative at the East African Parliament. You're most welcome, Hon.Lydia.
Good evening, listeners. About is John.
Yes, I will also joined by Mr. Morrison Rwakakamba, Chief Executive Officer of the Agency for Transformation. That's a proactive civil society group, working for in the agricultural sector. You're most welcome, Mr. Rwakakamba.
Good evening, listeners and viewers.
We expect to be joined by Mr. Julius Mugula, Senior Program Director at Forward, that's the Forum for Women in Democracy. Mr. Rwakakamba, does the Ugandan agricultural sector get the attention it deserves?
Well, my own sense is that it's not yet. I think there is so much to do, not only at the policy level, but also at the implementation level. At the policy level, we still have no clear agriculture policy that brings together all departments or resources for policy direction and policy monitoring. And we have had a number of, numerous policies. The PMA, Rural Development Strategy. You now have the Prosperity for All. You now have the National Development Plan. You have the DSIP, which is for investment in agriculture. All of them prescribing certain directions. But if you look at the way our productivity has been, you realize that for the last 10 years, agriculture productivity reduced from 5.6%. In 2006, it even went to negative 0.3, and it has just moved up and is still stagnating at 1.3. So,
in terms of what?
In terms of productivity, the volume of agricultural produce,
yes,
especially if you look at crop agriculture, majorly, it is the one that has been, I think, largely suffering. It's even the same with traditional crops like coffee, which have been suffering because one, most of the trees are old. They are over and above 30 years. Which
1920s, most of the coffee trees.
Yeah, that's very true. So the drive that the National Coffee Authority has been doing actually has been to push and create nurseries and distribute free seedlings. And it happens at a time when the global demand for coffee is increasing at a rate of 13% per year, meaning that the problem is not the market, but the problem is the production. So there has to be re-engineering and a new focus on the way we promote agriculture. So the problem for me, along the value chain, everybody is talking about lack of access to markets. Everybody is talking about lack of market. It's actually not lack of market. It's actually limited production and limited productivity. And this is why, for me, the national strategy would be to say, how do we increase production across all the crops, across all the livestock, across the fishing sector, to make, because the markets are huge. You have your maize, people from Southern Sudan will come to your garden to say, I want that maize. You have coffee, people will come with weighing scales even before you harvest, and they want to buy it raw. They actually want to buy
futures, they call it futures.
Yeah, to buy futures, and they are buying gardens, which is of course not very good for farmers. You go to Bosia and you see the kind of Kenyans who are coming in to pick maize, to pick beans. It's absolutely unbelievable. So the market is not even the problem. We have got local market because we have got an increasing population. You have got a regional market that is working specifically under the rubric of East African community, where people can freely move some of these products. So for me, the focus is really going to be for transform agriculture on stimulating our own production. The other point I want to make, Edmond, is on the soils. You know, everybody talks about Uganda as a fairy tale, it's a green country, we have got good soils, but the latest research doesn't say so. There is a research by SIGA, which is an American research agency that also works with IFPRI. They have been here and they took oil samples across the country. Soil samples, and they found that our soils have been depleted of all nutrients without being nourished for over the years, and our soils are nitrogen deficient. So, and when you go to most of these shops that are selling fertilizer, they're actually selling potassium, which is like the NPK.
Yeah, that's nitrogen.
They are not selling, they are not selling urea, which is very rich, which is very rich in nitrogen. So across the board,
we're buying the raw fertilizers.
Because of really lack of information, because of limited extension. Because this extension we are talking about, whether it is NADS or otherwise, we have only 16,000 extension workers in the country to attend to 4 million households, which means it would take almost 6.9 or 7 years for every farmer to see an extension worker per annum. So, meaning that unless we try and harness different ways of reaching out to farmers with information, either using technology, using radio, using new methods, not all times of an extension worker visiting a farmer, it is absolutely going to be very difficult. And for me, that's a conversation that we need to have.
Let's talk about productivity. Forget about production. Productivity. How can you improve yields per acre per?
How you improve yields? One, that we must make sure that agricultural inputs are cheap, and that farmers can be able to access them. The other aspect is how do we make also labor? How do we make labor cheap? Because one of the biggest problems are labor resources in some of the farms and in these villages. It's women who are carrying a hoe, and the hoe can never transform agriculture. Some few months ago, I was in Kamwenge where I visited some farmers, and just 1 acre, a woman could not handle it. So what happened to the small, hand tractors? What happened to those tractors that were at sub-counties? Even in places where tractors were supplied, they were not working because when they stopped, they could not get spare parts, or they could not even find capabilities for local mechanics or engineers who could be able to work on those tractors. So yes, we really have to, again, even the seed. Can farmers access seed? And if they have seed, can they produce their own seed? You have seed companies that are not willing to give technology to these farmers to produce their own seed, because it means that they would lose the market for seed. So you have a cartel, really a cartel of issues that are hampering productivity, and there has to be a strategic way, a measured way, a coordinated way by all the leaders or research agencies. You have research agencies that don't have resources to tackle things like crop diseases, weeds, banana weed, coffee weed. It's really a cartel of problems in the agriculture sector.
Right.
Even veterinary services for people with animals, whether cows, whether pigs or sheep that cannot find these drug shops. Most of them are private, and veterinary extensionists are very few. And even those that we have prefer to stay in smaller towns, either watching Premiership, and they have no clear incentives to reach out to the rural areas, to reach out to the people and give them the advice they need.
All right, we'll get deeper on that. Several issues you raised: the handheld plows, the seed, industry, and so on. Hon.Lydia, wanyoto, does agriculture matter that much? We're getting our oil very soon. Give us an explanation on that.
Good evening, listeners. Once again, you see, we are bringing this talk show at a time when Uganda has just assumed the chair of the East African community, and therefore we must get our act right. Looking at our country, having been in the EAC integration prosperity, and even now as somebody consulting with on various sectors of the community, we have two important comparative advantage in the 5 countries, but also leverage. One of them is agriculture. Morris has talked about the issues of the soil, but even with the soil of Uganda today, we still have good soils compared to other countries. Without adding any fertilizer, we still have good organic soils that can measure to produce food for East Africa. Compared to Kenya, that is really arid, and other countries that have small land patches or bigger, more malnourished soils. And having said that, we still stand an opportunity to put agriculture as one of our comparative advantage sectors to sell in the community, because the community is not just for talk shows or for show. It's meant to help us open market and collaborate in trade and growth. And therefore, apart from education, which we really have other children come to study in school in Uganda, but we also have food. We can grow and sell food without doing anything else. So for me, I think that it is very important that our country does prioritize. We should prioritize. Even me, I don't know if I wanted to deal in maize, for example, Edmond, where I should go in Uganda. Uganda must be zoned to begin with.
Yes.
We must zone our country. If I wanted pineapples, which part of Uganda do I go to? Because if I wanted matoke, where do I go to? I want 5 tons of matoke every 2 months. Where do I go? If I want maize, where do I go? So first of all, we must zone this country, depending on the food, the use of the food that is grown in those parts of the country. And when we zone, then we mount research institutions there, because the biggest challenge our people have under farmers is the seed industry. They have very poor seeds, and therefore even if we have good soils, they will not get good yields. So if we zone the country, then you locate in those areas relevant extension workers, relevant mechanization of the agriculture, relevant cereal construction collection centers, as it were, because this is happening in Kenya. If you ask me that to tell you to go and pick flowers, I'll take you to Naivasha. It's the center for flowers in Kenya. If you told me you want tea, I'll take you to Nyeri. I even know the market where they make tea in Nyeri. Even the quantities of tea I know the different brands. If you wanted to do beef, I know I take you beef, it is northeastern. But in Uganda, where can you take people? Where you find packed beef, animals for holding, holding grounds for animals. Where are the holding grounds for animals? These Rwakakambas who are cattle keepers or in cattle rearing. Where are your holding grounds for marketing? Because cattle is part of the so then Kabale, how much
holding grounds, explain that briefly.
Or I'm talking about zoning.
Yes.
The country. If I want to purchase so many trucks of animals, I don't have to go to somebody's farm. I could be a business person and I buy those cows in that sub-region and put them in one area, like a field,
kind of marketplace.
And then I can. That's a holding ground, because if I know that people from Kenya or Tanzania or Rwanda will come in every end of month, 30th of every month, to pick animals or to pick beef, dressed beef. You might have slaughterhouses and holding ground for your animals. Then you buy them and deliver them in an area. Tell me where I can go and pick mounts of beef or animals apart from these traditional market days.
Yes.
So I'm talking about we must improve, because the concept is traditionally there. We have market days in our community. I know you have to buy chicken from Leader on which day, but we must have professionalized, and in policy like Mota said, zone the country, and in East Africa we should market Uganda to say if somebody from Dar es Salaam wants Sim in whatever amounts, he will just click his computer or the market and he will say, oh, it is in Lira in Uganda on this day, and this is how I get there. So because the biggest challenge we have in Uganda is people don't know where to take their produce.
Yes.
And because they don't know where to take their food, they are not motivated to grow food. Because when they grow their food, it either they work with them or they not manage to take it to maybe a collection center, like I talked about tea. Anybody who lives in Nyeri or Meru, as soon as their tea is ready, they put it in the basket and take it for weighing they go to the just at the cooperative society and get for their pay.
Right.
They get a check and they get their pay. Where is that organized in Uganda?
Right.
So I think that first of all we need to give hope to people so that they are motivated to start growing food. If I know, for example, as day follows the night, that if I grow maybe 3 or 4 tons of Irish potatoes, they will be sold off. They will be picked in the month of June or July.
Yes.
I will not sleep. I will make sure that I grow these potatoes and I will take them to the either the cooperative union center or whatever. But people don't know that the tomatoes can be bought. I come from an area that grows a lot of coffee and vegetables. These mbogas, cabbages, carrots, tomatoes. These are perishable vegetables, but they are very marketable. To these days, people are minding about their health. These are the organic food from the mountains. Carrots are grown freely with cabbages, but they rot, and tomatoes, because when they have been grown in Wanale slopes or mountain goat, and they are ready to come down the slopes of the town, then where do they go next? So and you cannot leave this to the wananchi. This is a government's responsibility to zone the country, and when you zone the country, it becomes then easy for you to deploy training institutions, to deploy research institutions in terms of resources, to even deploy market centers, and even trade, we have to call trade sports centers, and the holding grounds I'm talking about, because you put goods in one place so that they are picked in another 2-3 days, market days. Now, until you do that, and yet this is gold, really, because if you're going to fight household incomes in Uganda, the only way you can enter everybody is household and have somebody have very money is through agriculture. Right. Because even if it's in the backyard, it will depend on somebody's strength, but also how much land they own. 1 acre, you grow your tomatoes and deliver them. Right. There are 5 acres, you grow your potatoes and you deliver them to the center. But we don't have that organized system, and that's when we shall lose out, because in East Africa alone, in the market of 120 million people, I do not see where else we can compete as a country, except in agriculture and in the services of education. Right. Kenya is so much ahead of us in industry. Rwanda has gone IT, they are doing services. Tourism is booming in Tanzania. So let's focus on what we have, God given. All right. And this is where the government can really help. And I think that, yes, we are discovering oil. It is a strategic resource. But before oil came, God had already given us good soils and good weather. All right.
Hon.Lydia, before we leave that point, is it possible to talk about zoning without talking about agriculture, without talking about industrial zones, processing zones, and urbanization?
Well, but what comes first? How can industrialization is the peak. It is when you are processing, when you are...
Well, as a matter of planning, you're saying
you can, but for now, we must have the basics for now. Because it's not, for me, I don't mind if we began by, first of all, empowering farmers to know that if they grow their pineapples in Bugerere, in Mokono, those pineapples will be picked. Then with the time, we can industrialize again by zoning, by saying you put a research, there are those, you itemize them. People, first of all, need good seeds. You put a research institution that will help people have the right seeds to plant. Then you put in place research institutions and extension workers. Make sure that when their food grows, it does not die of the final disease that Moira is talking about, the attacks of these, and then the proper sprays and the drugs. Then from there, when you have harvested your food, we need to have seeds that we're talking about so that they are able to be dried properly and stored. Then we can talk about the value addition. But there's so much campaign about value addition. And they're adding value to what? To 2 buckets of Irish potatoes.
So production comes number 1.
Yeah. Then because for me, if I have my raw food, and somebody is coming to buy to take it across the border for processing, as long as it's bought, I have no problem. But if I'm being empowered enough to begin our processing it, that's the next level, the ultimate. But we've not even left the ground rules. We've not zoned the country. Just give me an example, maybe I'm wrong. If I wanted the food in big amounts, tell me one center in Uganda that is known for delivering any kinds of food.
Irish potato from
where? No, you're joking. I know.
I'm talking, brother.
I know youth in Kabale who tried to grow onions and also grow Irish potatoes.
There is
when they got an opening in Kenya to deliver, they're not even able to meet the demand, and they are overwhelmed.
Right. There was this story we're talking about that. There was this report about people from the Middle East wanted goats. They sent 3 aircraft to collect goats. They managed to fill just one with a lot of hardships. They never came back. Well, listeners, this is Spectrum on Radio 1. Tonight, making the right national priorities. How can Uganda improve its agricultural sector, which is the backbone of its economy? We're going for a break. We'll be back to stay tuned.
Welcome to the MTN Service Center, sir.
Hey.
How can I help you?
We are here to buy MTN SIM cards.
Okay.
Meet my wife and my daughter and my son. This is my father, my mother and my cousin Sylvia.
Oh wow, that's great.
Hey, I need even for my auntie piece. Hey, come close, auntie piece. Behind her is my mechanic and my newspaper vendor and my boss and the pastor.
Okay, sir.
This Christmas, buy an MTN SIM card to win free airtime for a year. Dial *188# to win. 250 winners will immediately be notified on SMS each day. Win free airtime for a year with MTN this Christmas. Terms and conditions apply.
And of course there is my brother, my electrician, my bramba, and my baba's best friend's girlfriend.
MTN. Everywhere you go.
Excuse me, guys. Let me through, please.
Yes.
Check this guy. Goodness, dude, what are you doing? Get real. Just move a little. What? A little bit.
Man, what are you doing bringing a cow into the sitting room?
It's just for when I want milk.
Just what?
Just please move. Let it come and sit here.
What's wrong with this guy?
You cannot keep a cow in your home, but you can get the freshness of its milk straight from the farm into your home. Get fresh dairy milk for freshness straight from the farm every day. Fresh Diary, so fresh.
Ça va, hello. My name is Kogole Andemina, very serious Congolese tailor. People see me when they want to look good. People leave my shop looking like superstars of TV. But however much I make you look beautiful or even sexy like me, I cannot change the person inside, the real you. Kind of like Uganda Waraji. It has this beautiful look, but inside they have maintained the same old spirit that we know. The same old spirit we have known for many years in a new suit. New look. Oh, you need to try it.
Enjoy the new look Uganda Waraji. The same Ugandan spirit with a new look. Uganda Waraji. Same spirit, new look.
Uganda Waraji.
Excessive consumption of alcohol is harmful to your health. Not for sale to persons under 18 years. Please drink responsibly.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Welcome back on Spectrum tonight, making the right national priorities. How can Uganda improve its agricultural sector, which is the backbone of its economy? Our guests tonight, Hon.Lydia wanyoto, two-time Ugandan representative at the East African Parliament, Mr. Morrison Rwakakamba, Chief Executive Officer at the Agency for Transformation. Morrison, could you talk to us about the pressure points that we need to press, the buttons we need to press about agriculture? Is it seeds? Is it plows? Is it what should we do to jumpstart this sector?
Yeah, one is, Lydia talked about markets and how to access those markets. And you realize that in the country you have only 14% of the community access roads that are classified as motorable. Yet those community access roads, other than trunk roads, are more important for linking production to the market and for linking even inputs market to where farmers can access them. So you must have an investment. I don't know whether it will have to be done by the local governments, having power to open up those community access roads, or whether UNRWA is willing to go deeper into those villages and make sure that the production is getting to the market. It's really going to be very, very important. it's important in a sense that it will be able to lead farmers to get better prices, because they can push their produce to the market and vice versa. And the other aspect is on the regional market, where I agree with Lydia that yes, we still have leverage, but we are taking this leverage for granted, and we think ourselves will always remain better. But even there are still some problems at the border points that farmers have not been able to circumvent. And I would call upon our legislators in the East African community, the revenue authorities across, to make sure that it's easier for farmers to transport their produce across. If you go to places like Mpondwe, there is a lot of trade. That's the
Congo.
Yeah, Congo. Via Kasese area. It's a bit easier. The border is still a bit porous. But if you go to places like Busia, you find that to transport maize, you need about six regulatory certificates: certificate of origin, aflatoxin certificate, number of permits, and you find that to get them, you need to go to different places in Kampala. So you would think that it should be a central place where you would go and
get all of them, all the stamps,
get all of the stamps at once, and be able to transport your produce, so that we can harness this common market and move further. But you talked about pressure batteries. So in Uganda, smallholder agriculture and subsistence agriculture is what is dominant. You have less than 4% of what you would call, commercial, large and big scale farmers who have plantations or who have ranches. So I think there has to be investment in people who have got larger resources, who have got larger networks and technical capabilities to be able to produce more for the region, because for me food security is the first line of comprehensive peace and security. So for me, agencies, national agencies like UPDF that already have a lot of land, and now that we, apart from our peace missions abroad, we are focusing more on, we are not in a state of war as a country. So for me, UPDF should access national resources to be able to invest into production and agriculture. The same thing with groups like prisons. They are already doing interesting work around agriculture, the prisons, but I think they need to modernize, they need to mechanize, they need to also, invest in this huge production, so that our silos, so that we can maintain robust food security and we can sell surplus, just like Russia and some of these other countries are doing. There is also the subject, Edmond,
yes,
of budget allocation. I don't think the problem for Uganda is actually even allocative efficiency. Because yes, there is a Maputo declaration which says that we should always allocate 10% of our resources to agriculture. But even the 4 and 3.6% that agriculture has been getting, there is a dilemma that most of this money never reaches the farm. How efficient are we utilizing even the little money like 3.4 that is received by the agriculture ministry? Are we hiring, new officers instead of investing in research that would lead to stopping of wilt? Are we buying more vehicles for NADS coordinators? Are we investing in air-conditioned offices? So even for me, the 3.4%...
Even the quality of the budget for the little that we get.
Yeah, the little that we get. I don't think we are getting value for money.
All right.
You have been seeing what has been happening, with NADS and all those issues. So even before we call for the 10%, which is a noble demand, we need to first utilize the 3.6% which we get.
And create efficiencies in managing that.
Absolutely.
So it gets down to the
Absolutely. For me, that's the beginning point.
Let's talk about GMOs. Do you support them?
It's really not about, I don't support GMOs per se, but I support biotechnology. I don't think we should be trapped in the past and all these sensibilities about our own seeds. What we need as a country, I think we need to create a gene bank that works. There is a gene bank in Entebbe, but it needs to be expanded to make sure that that thing started in the Bible during the Noah days.
Yes.
That in every species that we have in this country,
kept it somewhere.
It should be kept somewhere. The long-horned Ankole cows, I can now see a lot of them in Kenya. I don't know where they got them from. If it's the local seed, bean seed, maize seed that we have always have, let it be in the data bank. But let's open up to more seed that are biotechnologically improved, that can resist some of these wilts, that can stand the withers of the climate change and the dry season and the changing world, so that we can maintain productivity, feed our own communities, and be able to sell. If we in future want to go back to some of these traditional crops that, for me, most of them that are no longer sustainable, then we can go to the gene bank and multiply them again.
You're saying the seeds, our traditional seeds, are no longer sustainable?
Most of them.
That's going to be controversial.
Yeah, most of them are really no longer controversial. One, because of the kind of land holding that you have, on 1 acre, and before they used to be sustainable because you had, 10 acres and all that, and you could plant the way you want. Soils were still, they were still very good. They had, but now they are no longer sustainable in many ways.
Honorable Lydia, are we investing enough money in research, specifically agricultural research?
Well, we need to look at the trends, but I think we need to do more, because for us who are not experts in agriculture, you can only tell that there's enough research or there is something when you look at the products on the market, or when you see the trickle down, because agriculture is one area that will obviously show a difference in household poverty.
Absolutely, that's true.
It's just like it's a click. The moment we can unpack and roll out a proper agriculture agenda, you will not find poor people in house. You don't talk about household poverty in Uganda, because every household in Uganda will be able to sell something. Either some eggs or some chickens or some vegetables or some. So for me, research is synonymous with the yields, but also because the population has grown. We have actually one of the highest population growth, I think 3.5 or 3.2%
per annum, 3.4% per annum,
and therefore that directly impacts on the land, because we all live on the land. But in that notwithstanding, if we had proper research, we'd be able to utilize that land we have with big yields, and that would sort out the issue of household income.
How should we be doing this? Giving more money to Kawanda. Their land has been encroached upon.
No, not just about money. Actually, I was going to talk about
we have research
financial infrastructure. We don't have an agriculture fund in Uganda, and I think that is something that we cannot run away from. I know that there have been efforts of NADS, then these NADS coordinators are those who buy goats and pigs for people. I think that should not be the case. We need to review the policy and maybe get people to get this money through a financial fund arrangement to finance agriculture, and allow it so that the yields in agriculture are long term or medium term, and allow people to borrow money to grow the food or the inputs of their choice and be able to pay back. But it's very tricky for me to see that, now the politics is about, the fight now is about this NADS coordinator bought me a sick goat of 4 kilograms, and in the books of account he's reflecting a goat of 20 kilograms. And that's how they bought me small piglets, when in the books of account
they're actually conniving with the farmers. I don't think farmers should also be let off the hook, because it's really just down there. But I think you talked something about inputs that I would want to emphasize. We have on the market a proliferation of fake inputs, which calls into question groups like UNBS and other agencies that are supporting.
UNBS, they had started working on fake products. They were fired. All of them were sacked. They lost their jobs.
Well, I don't know. Of course, I don't know why. I have not studied why many people at UNBS were fired. But what I know is that
we are exposing iron filings in sugar.
We need to control fake inputs that are in the market. Farmers are buying herbicides, are buying pesticides that don't actually work, so they spend money, and most of these things don't work, and they get frustrated, and they get out of the market.
That goes back to what I said earlier. If you zone the country in a way, you are decentralizing and taking decisions to the actual farm places. But if you bring everything to be purchased in some location here in Kampala, the center, downtown here, why wouldn't people
container village?
Because something going to Mbali meant to be growing coffee and vegetables alone. It will be very difficult to catch the suppliers of those inputs for vegetables in that location.
It comes back to zoning.
Yeah,
if pineapples are in cover,
you'll be able to scale down the economies of scale. You'll be able to identify and actually track where the problem is. But because there is a mix, I mean, there is what you call it, there's a lot of mix here where they purchase those things. You find animal drugs in the same place for pigs, for cows, for goats, for chicken, for rabbits.
And it's
mixed with where they get agricultural inputs.
Yeah. The other addition,
for beans, for peas. I mean, you can't do that.
The other addition would be that if we had strong farmer organizations and cooperatives that would be able to directly purchase, manufacture, or import
on
behalf of farmers, then because they have vested interests in
they even have other benefits, collective bargaining benefits.
But what is happening now, like for agricultural inputs, the system is that they're supposed to be zero rated, the VAT tax regime.
Yes, they're not paying,
which is very important for making them cheaper. But what happens is that at the border, URA must come up with a clear inventory, a clear nomenclature of what is actually an agricultural inputs. So you find that these importers in Container Village utilize or harness that law in order to get agricultural inputs in, but when they reach here, then they determine their own price because they are again operating in this laissez-faire market. So farmers advocated for removal of tax, but they are not benefiting from it. It's the traders, it's the importers who are benefiting from that tax.
Let's talk a little bit, get back to the crops again, but let's talk a little bit about the animals. Are we doing well there on the animals? Do we have enough chickens, for instance, reared?
Where are they being reared?
Yeah, with chicken, maybe it's cheap.
Chickens, goats.
The problem again goes to inputs. You have chachu, which is chicken feed, that is very expensive. Farmers really need capabilities on how they can make their own. Chachu, and the mistake we have done is that we export non-processed maize to Kenya.
Processed maize and then import
Kenya. We import bland chicken feed. So there has to be.
It's like we want to export our oil. Refine it somewhere, then bring it back in.
Yeah, but the market for chicken, the market for eggs is immense.
We're buying chicken from Brazil. South Africa is starved for maize. They don't have enough crop yield. Kenya is having a problem with maize.
No,
the main crop. Tanzania has a problem. One time they had to shut their borders when the South Africans came knocking. Let's talk a little bit more about agricultural processing. I would like you to talk to us about the ox plows and the efficiencies that those can create, and I will move from the handheld. But first of all, agricultural processing, Madam Lydia.
Of course, for me, I want us to begin with the basics, because what do you want to process? You will not build an industry and to process 1 ton of maize, or in every season. I mean, they are not making economies of scale. They are even not producing to capacity. So for me, the basics, let's first of all grow enough food and make proper projections.
But let's talk about maize, for instance.
Because it goes without saying that we should not export. We lose out as a country when we export and processed foods. But are the foods for exports there? Because it's like we are ad hocing. It must be planned.
We're good at that, ad hocing.
No, we should not. I mean, we cannot be
vanilla today,
be doing the wrong things.
Rabbits tomorrow.
So first of all, let's zone the country. When we zone the country, it will be very easy for us to identify infrastructure that we need for those areas because of the production, the items. We have to select the items where they are grown, and then you'll have the relevant research institutions there. You'll have the relevant inputs like morrison, and it will be very difficult to bring counterfeits because you are going to a particular place. The suppliers are known.
They know what.
But if you begin mixing them at the national center, you cannot track these guys. And for example, for the animals, like you are saying, areas that grow animals, they should be known, and then we know the
if you want rabbits, you know how long.
And then you also deploy the medical workers, the vets, and the extension workers that know how to handle animals. Then you zone out and prepare holding grounds or slaughterhouses. Then you market. You say if you want to get to processed meat, you travel on this day in this area, and for so much and for what quantity.
Let's look a little bit more about processing. Let's look at a basic crop like maize. You don't need a large industrial outfit to process maize and package it.
Okay,
we don't have many of those grain millers, for instance.
Because I know, for example, yesterday I was watching, there was a scene somewhere in, I think, Waise. They've spent 2 weeks without power.
Yes.
And these are small processors. They do small maize stuff, they do vegetables processing and also juices. They went in the streets and threw away their containers saying that they needed power.
That's why the Rural Electrification Agency was created, to make sure that
it's also important that energy
in the rural
is
areas
there.
for people to do primary.
Because they cannot afford
But if you're zoning, then it's no longer rural electrification.
Small processing
and
under generator power, because generator power
it's very expensive.
It's very expensive.
But if you talk about zoning, you spoke about rural electrification. Some people say it's very expensive. You know, one power line to one hill and only one man is using it for a small factory. If you're doing agricultural zoning, you're doing industrial zones, urbanization.
I'm giving you an example. We are not very different.
The kind of big push moves that you need to change.
Communities must be organized to deliver their own, what they can grow.
Morrison.
Yeah, I do agree with the last point that Lydia made about organizing. You see, there are many farm organizations, but they are not organized innately and organically. They are organized from outside. NADS come and say we are putting up NADS groups, and people come into those groups because maybe they want to get goodies, pigs and goats, like we mentioned, from government and donor programs. You don't have farmers that come out of their own willingness, out of a certain purpose and aim that gets them to organize. And for me, farmers need the information on why they need to organize, and they start their own groups that are not accentuated from outside. So it's through that then they would exercise agency. Then the other problem, which is related with zoning that we are talking about, the kind of farmer groups we have are omnibus farmer groups. You find some that are growing vanilla, growing coffee, growing beans, growing maize. They are all in the same group. So they are not commodity-specific organizations. So they don't understand their own value chain. But if you have commodity-specific groups, if they are growing coffee, or if they are rearing cattle, then they know all the issues. They know where to get the inputs, they know where to get the medicine, they know where the market is, they know how to project. They can even organize to get the milk cans, to get the cooler. They know the extension workers they need to contact. So for me, the kind of organizing that we need to be promoting, zoning would have helped to accentuate that. But even in the absence of zoning, let farmers get organized according to their own enterprises. That will promote clustering.
Rabbit farmers with rabbit.
Yeah, rabbit. So that they know all the issues, the opportunities and challenges around rabbits.
How do we move, Morrison, from the handheld haul upwards?
It really has to be very deliberate. One is to subsidize, in this free market economy, to subsidize things like tractors, things like ox plows, and if they are...
Let's say the progression, you can't jump to tractors. What do we have in the middle from the handheld?
They are ox plows in eastern Uganda.
Well, there's the argument about the ox plow and the handheld tractor.
No,
walking tractor.
You see, people like in eastern Uganda, I have moved in some of those districts. People have got that culture. I think the ox plow was introduced, so many years, like 40 or 50 years ago, and they know the economics and the dynamics of using ox plow. So for me, the leaders from that side, whether they are church leaders or political leaders and other actors in sub-counties, should be able to organize and look for these things, demand these things, find them, such that their farmers can access them. You see.
So you think
but
it's better for an ox plow?
For advanced farmers, because there is an increasing number of young people who are educated, who are graduates, who are going back to utilize the land resources. They have either bought or they are going back to their parents' land resources to utilize them. Those kind of farmers that are coming up, those ones can be able to mobilize resources, find financing, and invest in tractors. And there's going to be a lot of money really in agriculture, in any investment that you make in agriculture. And I can see young people leaving jobs in banks and other places to go back and invest on land.
Honorable Wanyoto, let's talk about the large farms. What space do we have for large farms going forward?
I want to begin with a campaign that was in Tanzania and was begun by government called Kilimo Kwanza.
Agriculture first.
Yeah, they were able to prioritize agriculture, but they had a transition arrangement for the mechanization. They began with small, appropriately made technology within Tanzania. You find that a small tractor, maybe with one or two plow behind trolling, and over time they've grown, and the farmers themselves are able to maintain and even do the repairs on the small tractors.
They can repair those tractors?
Yes, they had a chain, like Morris is saying. The mechanic, there must be a mechanic within the sub-counter of the area as an extension worker to maintain and be able to service those tractors.
I'd like to interrogate that point a little deeper, because I spoke to someone from NADS, and they say the problem they have with handheld tractors is that people they abandon them and they say that one has broken, then it goes back to the handheld hoe. And was saying they should use the ox plow. Is that something that can be explained? That concept a little bit deeper.
Because the Kilimo Kwanza campaign, it went back to the basics and to make sure that this what they began was just something coming from technology they cannot appreciate, or the product clustering they couldn't appreciate within their own community. On the borders of Tanzania, they grow a lot of cashew nuts. They now have what you are calling the processing. They are processing their own cashew nuts and packing them for export. But they began with the basics of growing the trees and being able to harvest them and being able to weed and grow that along the coast. So the zoning of the country, and it's not rocket science, because we can do it in Uganda. I mean, we know where we come from as communities, and we know the basic food we grow for household food security, but also for export.
Large farms?
And large farms in Uganda, it has a lot of the geopolitics of our land tenure system. So for me, I would be happy that we do not live in the box, to say Wanyoto should have maybe 10 square kilometers, square miles to grow coffee or to grow tea. Maybe if we come, I come from Elgon sub-region, where we have very serious land fragmentation because we are very densely populated. But we can arrange and have what we call out-growers. Every small household grows some food, and then we have a collection center. Yeah, it's not an issue.
Some people have said large farms. There's a lot of waste on large farms. Efficiencies are low on large farms. Morrison, what's your word?
We don't have the luxury of having land.
No, it's really true.
But in Uganda, you have to live within the circumstances. Our land tenure is very complex. We have
different systems.
If you have a zone where people are growing matoke and there are millions of people,
that's as good as a large farm.
It's as good as a large farm. But the last point I wanted to make is on contract farming, which I think can really be very helpful.
Yes.
Like in Kabari, you have got Nyabyumba Farmers Association that did a contract with Nando's here in Kampala to supply Irish potatoes for chips.
Remarkable.
And they have really been, for the last 4 years, making a lot of money through that. And
contract farming, explain that to us again.
Contract farming is where a group of farmers dealing in a specific product or enterprise find a buyer, a consistent buyer, and they write a contract. The problem is that farmers have not been having interesting capabilities to negotiate fair terms of the contract, and where lawyers and other actors may need to be interested. In Eastern Uganda, you had farmers growing Epurupuru sorghum, supplying it to Nairo breweries, and consistently making more consistent resources and enjoying what they are doing. So we need to organize to help farmers get organized, negotiate for them contracts with consistent buyers, whether these are supermarkets and other chains, so that we can supply consistent.
And that can work through cooperatives, mostly.
Cooperatives, organized farmer groups, associations, any form of organization that is along the chain of a product.
Let's try to develop it along crop lines. You've spoken about Irish potatoes, you've spoken about sorghum. It's already working with it used to have worked with coffee in the past. They used to pull coffee in silos and so on. It's worked with tea. What other crops?
With some local chicken farmers. They have an office somewhere in Kamocha, and they are supplying local chicken to a number of hotels that they have had contracts with here in town.
Indigenous chicken. What's there about them? Chicken is chicken, the late Joseph Kabila used to say, whenever you go in the wild. What's the difference between indigenous?
I mean, it's wrong, because I think people like I know very many people who prefer local chicken, maybe because of this is why we need to have again a gene bank, right? We don't lose them forever. Yeah, so local chicken are more expensive than these other broilers, the Muzungu,
which are fed on sodas. Some people think they eat sodas. They actually don't eat soda. Can you appraise the prosperity for us for our program for us?
I think there are a lot of programs of policy dimensions and directions that have been coming up in Uganda. We began with PMA, then we
Plan for Modernization of Agriculture.
Yes, then we went to NADS, then there are lots of them. But for me, I think that beyond the policy documents that are so beautiful, we need to get back to the basics and see that what research we are doing, what seeds we have in the banks, whatever we are doing in the research gets to down to the farmers. So therefore, there should be a lot of awareness campaigns, but also a leadership issue of getting people to work. Maurice talked about, I'm happy to hear that in Uganda, we have young people getting back to the land and trying to see how, because life is a struggle.
Young people should get back to the land?
We are going back to the land. And
you don't think they should sell border so they can, because you're moving from the land to services. That's how economies develop. Sell the land and do border.
But if you cannot even repair your border or buy fuel for your border, you don't even know that fuel is coming from, then how do you, and you consider the stage and fail to get one person to take to another level. But me, I'm happy to hear that actually out there are young people
profits in agriculture
beginning to be innovative, but also taking the bull by its horn, because it's not an easy decision.
They are selling eggs on Facebook.
So I'm happy to hear that, so that they are able to go back and be innovative, but also work hard. Because the topic we are discussing today, Edmond, they are not way about it. You must work hard. It's a very sensitive sector. You can lose a whole season of a crop, but you can also make it, and you can never go back in a season. So there's a lot of hard work. It's very sensitive
and smart work.
But it is I think a worthwhile thing, because we should get to work hard and be able to enjoy the sweat that comes with hard work.
Finally, as we go, Maurice.
Which is not a very common culture these days.
Maurice, as we go, what would you like to be in the budget on agriculture? What should they do?
I think there has to be more investment.
Very briefly.
There have to be a lot of investment in research and a lot of
extension workers, district agricultural officers,
and they should be specialized.
And in things like greenhouses, inputs for making a greenhouse should be available, should be cheaper, so that young people who have small plots of land here can run these greenhouses and produce out there and supply tomatoes to these chain shops and all that stuff. Irrigation, pesticides, fertilizer. Thank you very much, Leader. Yes, Hon.Lydia. Future leader representative of South Parliament, thank you. Veteran Prime Minister Morrison Rwakakamba, Chief Executive Officer, Agency for Transport. Thank you for tuning in. I've been on Edmond. We work on Monday. Have a very good evening. I'd like some today. Yes. Hello.
I didn't get the oil money.
She's a woman. Yes, how are you?
When I supposed to be on
Hey! How the night,
I organize the wedding tomorrow.
I'd like to say that. In India, they do that.
You see the problems of the single mother, they were saying how could you should bring a man to Uganda, somebody with the child, they abuse the culture.
Entered in this
opportunity to our
young man who is a Nigerian American.
She married, but Royals married. Royals is married. It's the woman that married. Royals is the woman that married. The film shows that boy. That's true. She chose the boy from the army.
The problem
when he was still 16 years old.
The problem is not that. The problem is that they were Toro.
And he was always told you have to denounce your clan, your family, and nationality came from Ireland. Then there is not Ireland, you go to Nigeria. And then they told him the children will be named by the wife, you can't name the story. And he kept complaining, I'm the only man in the world who can't name give names my own children. He kept complaining, but it's the wife that satisfied.
Yeah, she's a princess. She's